Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon, and I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about Season 5 of the Craft Chocolate Challenge, Craft Chocolate Challenge 2026. And before I bring on my guest today, Dustin Cornett, who is the founder of the Craft Chocolate Challenge, let's do a little bit of homework pretty quickly. I want to share that this is the homepage of the chocolatelife.com. You can go there, and this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. You can go up here, click on the join button, right? And you can support. There's always a free membership tier, and there are support levels beginning at $5 a month, and then higher levels on the annual basis include coaching and consulting hours. So you can not only support the Chocolate Life, but also help grow your business. And I would also like to remind people who are going to be watching today that you can go into the comments, whether it's the live chat in YouTube or the comments in LinkedIn or Facebook, and you can let us know where in the world you're connecting from. But if you have a question you'd like to ask either Dustin or me about the Craft Chocolate Challenge, or a comment you'd like to make about the Craft Chocolate Challenge, you can go into the comments. We'll get the shout out up on screen, and we will do our best to respond to what you have to say. And with all that out of the way, Dustin, welcome to today's episode of Pod Save Chocolate.
Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. You know, we saw each other in person recently at the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival in Rushville at the end of November. And, you know, we're in the middle of planning already the 2026 version of that. But we had snow here yesterday, right here in Arizona. It was only about maybe about 6 millimeters, about a quarter of an inch all told, right? But how are things in Rushville, Indiana, where you are today?
I woke up to 60-degree weather. So it's weird. I don't know.
Tropical.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Going down, and then it will get cold again, and who knows what happened. But crazy windy here last night. So
gotcha. So what I want to point out for everybody who might be watching is that we have here a post for this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. I create a post for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate. This is a sort of run of show. None of this is scripted ever. But what I can, if you're watching this, what you can do, you can go with your phone, you can click on the QR code, and it will take you to this page on another device. So if you're watching on a computer, you can follow along. That way you don't have to copy all the links or follow along. You can get them. And if we talk about something, we can add it to this page afterwards so that the links will appear. So I often update the pages after the fact. So Dustin, let's talk about number one. I got ahead of myself. There are really 4 main questions we want to talk about today. And let me zoom up on this. So there are 4 questions that we want to talk about today, and they are: what makes the competition different? What makes the Craft Chocolate Challenge different from other competitions? Who the competition is for? How the competition is judged? And why, if you're a craft chocolate maker, you should join the you should consider entering. So let's take that first. Let's take that first question. What makes the Craft Chocolate Challenge different from other competitions?
What makes it different is it's really not a competition forward thing. It's more of a feedback forward competition, and the competition is kind of have to have fun. But what we're trying to do is give feedback, and why that is I mean, gosh, we're season 5 already. It's insane how fast this is going. But I was struggling as a chocolate maker, and I was in a place where I really couldn't network very well, and I didn't have the opportunities to travel and do that. So I thought I would enter these contests and see where I was at as a chocolate maker and see if that helped. And I did that, and I didn't really get any feedback at all at that time. Like, this is like 6 years ago now. So some of those competitions are now offering some feedback, whether you pay for it or they give you a little tidbit or whatever. They're not going to give you as much feedback as we give you. That's just it's just part of it. their competition is set up differently, and that's fine. That's great, actually. So I saw that there needed to be something for people like myself. You know, we don't have the opportunity to network, or we're a small chocolate maker trying to figure out what to do. And where do we go? Where do we go? So I'm in a place where we could go. So that's basically what kind of sets it apart. Um, we have fun with it. We have the competition. We have awards. It is kind of a difficult competition because we don't have a lot of winners. There's only 3 winners in each category, so it is pretty competitive. But that's not the main focus. The main focus is to better yourself, to understand what it is to make chocolate and how you want to make chocolate. And the great part too about the feedback is you can even submit questions, like exactly what you want to know, and we can give that to the judges so they can go into it thinking about it. And this is basically the only place you can get that, and it doesn't cost you anything, so that's also great.
No, actually, there are a couple other points that I want to make. For people who don't know, I have been a judge since season 2. So I've judged 3 different seasons, and I've sort of been in a head judge capacity. So I've been working with Dustin on the sort of the rubric, how things are judged. And I do want to get into that. But before I do, I want to give a quick shout out to Mike King of Encore Coffee and Chocolate Company in sunny Kansas City, Missouri. The question is how chilly it is, Mike, not necessarily how sunny it is, because it's sunny here in Arizona, where I am, up in the mountains. But it was also 15 degrees this morning, so it was a little chilly where we are here. But Dustin, what makes the competition different? I think number one is, unlike most other competitions that are out there, and we may or may not mention them, but this came from your frustrations, for want of a better word, as a craft chocolate maker. You're in rural Kentucky at the time.
Mhm.
There's not a community of craft chocolate makers in that part of the southeastern United States, right? And you're struggling with, how do I get people who might be other craft chocolate makers, or other people who are sort of critics or judges who are knowledgeable about this, how do I get feedback on what it is that I'm doing, right? And you felt that the other competitions weren't providing you with that really important feedback component, especially if you didn't make it into the awards level, right? You had no idea. It was just sort of like a black hole. You sent your stuff in, and if you didn't make it, into the cut, you learned nothing about what you're doing. And so I think that's the motivation for the festival is a little bit different. The other one is that there is a limit to the number of categories. I mean, other competitions, there's category inflation. They started out with 10 and now they're at 50 different categories, right? And so you've been adamant from the very beginning that there are going to be 4 categories, like plain and flavored dark, plain and flavored milk, plain and flavored white, and bars with inclusions. Those are the only 4 categories. Now, thanks to the generous support of Cocoa Supply, we added another category, which is an innovations award. And this grew out of my frustration as a judge, that we often had entries into competitions, whether it was this one or other competitions that I've judged, where there were people who were taking risks, people who were doing interesting things, but might not have executed on the idea well enough to rise to the top level of getting an award, right? And I think that for me, your willingness to consider it, right? Oh, this is an interesting idea, right? Without adding, oh, it's like, craft chocolate, made in batches that are less than, 5 kilograms, right? Which, other competitions make those distinctions, right? In terms of batch size. But I wanted to go and talk about how you might reward people for taking risks, right, when it comes to flavor elements. And I think that's really, really cool. And then the other thing you do is that within each of those categories, there are only 3 winners. There's a goal, a first, a second, and a third. right? So there's no prize inflation. It's not, oh, everybody who achieves a score of 4 out of 5 and above gets an award. Nope, there's only 3 in each category. Now, I wasn't a part of the decision to do that. So how and why did you come up with that as the format for what you were trying to do?
In a true competition, that's kind of how it goes, isn't it? Like you have like, Olympics, you have like the 3 winners. So I'm not after getting as many entries as I possibly can. And I'm not trying to showcase the awards as something you can use to help really market yourself in a lot of ways. So you want to enter a lot of bars into a contest because you can get a better chance at winning something. And then you can use that certificate or whatever sticker to show that your chocolate is at this level. That was not my interest. So it's basically, think about it as the feedback, and think about it as, because it's free, a way that you can test the waters before entering the contests that do cost money. So it's a different realm I wanted to create that's supportive of the chocolate makers more than anything. And then, have fun with it. But it's not, I want everybody to get an award. It'd be great. But in the end, it's typically, that's kind of how it's always been, like gold, silver, and bronze. This is it, Now, I will say it's probably not super fair to have plain versus flavored and kind of everybody grouped together into one kind of generic category. But we're only accepting so many entries because of the feedback. We can't we can't take on so many entries, because then we wouldn't be able to provide the feedback. And that is the main goal. So it's keep it simple and manageable so we can perform our duties at the highest levels, which is the feedback, and then have fun with the rest and then go from there. Does that make sense?
So I do want, no, it's not a question of, whether it makes sense to me. This is your competition. In the end, it's your decision about how you want to go and do these things.
I do want
all I can, but one of the things that I really do think is important about it is that anybody can provide feedback to you about the way the competition is organized. So, for example, I said we needed to award innovation. And I know that one of the things that we did in last year's competition for the first time is that people were, if not encouraged, they were told that if they wanted to submit bars just for the judges to comment on them, provide feedback on them, but didn't want to enter them into the competition, right? That was allowed. And I think that's really, really cool, right? And that didn't come from me. I think it came from people who entered the competition, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, in some cases, maybe they have a few other bars that they would like sampled as well. And we restrict how many entries, only 1 entry per category, only 2 entries per contest. So they possibly have some other bars that they would like some feedback on that would be ineligible for them to contribute to like the overall contest. So, but we would like to provide the feedback if we possibly can. And if we can keep the numbers manageable where we can offer that, then we'll always offer that. And even though we have a master's program, so whenever you win,
we'll get there. We'll get to the master's program.
Well, they can do it too. They can.
Oh, okay.
So send bars that are not part of the competition but can have it reviewed.
Yeah. So I know that Mike of Encore Coffee and Chocolate Company has been a winner in past competitions, and so Mike, you're still watching. I hope you can go into the comments and let us know what you think about the competition and your experience with things. But the one point I did want to make about what makes the competition different, and as a judge, I can tell you what makes it manageable for me, right? Is this notion of you can only enter 2 bars and you can't enter more than 1 per category, which gets around, category stuffing. The competition Most other competitions make money, right? They charge fees for this. And so what they're doing is we want to encourage as many entries as we possibly can. And so if you're a chocolate maker, you could enter 20 bars, some do, and you could order 5 or 6 or 7 bars in the same category. And so if you're saying every bar that gets a score, an aggregate average score of above, let's say 80 out of 100, right, you can win an award, right? And I understand why that works, but that's not what this competition is about, which I think is very, very cool. Tell me a little. So one of the things I noticed is, listen, I want to share with everybody. We're going to go over to the Craft Chocolate Challenge website right now. But how did you decide to organize your judging panel? Right. And why didn't you talk to me before the first one?
So, okay, we can go into some of this.
No. I don't care about that.
Yeah. I think it's important kind of how it started. So year one, I did allow up to 5 entries, and I didn't specify the categories. And we did have a chocolate maker enter like 5 into one category, and that made it difficult. And it made it difficult to actually help them. And then it just kind of, it didn't seem like it was going to flow better the more this competition or this challenge grew, that we would be able to do that. So I had to start thinking about these limitations on how it could improve the contest overall. So that was one restriction. I think year 2, we allowed more entries, but only 1 per category. And then after that, we scaled it back even more because we were getting overwhelmed with the entries, and we didn't want to have the issue with not being able to give the feedback we wanted. So another thing is about the judging, right? And the judges. Who is judging this chocolate is very important to the chocolate maker, because we have different markets. Definitely me, when I was in Kentucky and now in the Midwest, my market's different than people on the East and West Coast. I'm going to be more concerned about who my market is and try to see who the judges are, to pull that information from them to see if that's more important for me. So I do get some basic information from the judges, kind of about what they like and preferred chocolate. If somebody prefers a dark chocolate and I enter a white chocolate and they give me kind of a bad score, I'm going to understand that maybe this is not their preference. So I'm going to check what maybe the other preferences of some of the other judges are pertaining to white chocolate. And as an organizer, I try to balance this if I possibly can, which sometimes is harder to do, but I try to give a good balance.
So balance in what respect? So if we can, what's as someone who wants to know as much about the market as I possibly can, right? So I'm a data guy and I want data-driven decisions, and I've done analysis on who wins and who doesn't win, major awards and things like that. But number one is, if the judges want to be, they can be anonymous, right? But
yes,
it is up to each.
Yeah, it's up to them to
it is up to the judge to decide if they want to, right? Although if you were to look at some of these, you'd understand immediately who the judge is. That's, you do this. But you can get here, judge number 1, and the judges tend to be under 15 in total. So you got 14 the first year. But they're a chocolate maker, chocolatier. Their favorite food is Italian. Their preferred chocolate is milk chocolate, and their preferred beverages. And so here's a chocolate maker pastry chef who is who loves Japanese food, prefers dark milk chocolate, and whose beverages is tea. And I think, for me, number one, it's really, really interesting is that these are published before you need to submit your entries in many respects. So you know what the judging panel looks like, and you could submit bars that you think match what the preferences are of the judges. Right? The other thing is this is the 2022 challenge. So this is 5 years ago now, right? And I still get an idea about who the makeup is of the panel. I mean, if I were to go to the season 2 awards, I mean, you have the judges.
Yep.
With this, so I mean, there's a commitment to preserving the history of the challenge, which I think is really important, right? And there's also an openness and about transparency about who the judges are, and it's been consistent as well, which I think is, again, for me as a data geek, I think is really cool. Before we go further, Mike has responded, and he says it's been a great experience overall. It's great getting the feedback, which really helps when you need to improve, as well as how your consumers experience your bars. And then he says he highly recommends any new maker to get involved. Hey, Mike, thanks for the voice of support. So that, we'll get into other aspects of the website really quickly. But Dustin, there's something that Mike just mentioned in this comment is really, who is this competition for? Who is the challenge for? Because you're right, it's not really a competition in the same way other chocolate competitions. But who is the challenge for?
Well, it's open for anybody, but who is it going to help the most would be new chocolate makers, because they're going to be learning all of this stuff. We're helping when we get it. We even have places we get feedback on packaging and on the mold that they use. Some molds are just too thick to really enjoy the chocolate. Some packaging is just really confusing or inconsistent, or has legal issues or typos and things like that. And we're like scanning it and looking over it and giving the feedback. I mean, that's value right there, even without telling you about the chocolate. So really, any new chocolate maker should take the opportunity just to dive into the water and see where you're at and where to go. But also, if you're trying to get into something else, let's say you've been making chocolate for a while, maybe you're comfortable with single origin chocolate, but you want to start doing some things with flavors, but you're not as comfortable with adding the inclusions or adding the different flavors to it, give it a try. Give it a try. That's kind of where I feel like our market is going anyway. So why not? So it's open for anybody. I'm not expecting the bigger makers in the world to enter, but I'm not excluding them either. It is whoever wants to partake can partake. You just have to make your own chocolate. You have to make your own chocolate. So.
Yeah. So, and for me, what I think is really, really important there is this notion that committing to enter one of the big international competitions is a big commitment, and often a very, very large financial commitment, right? And what you have here is you have something for which the barrier to enter is extremely low. All you need to do is supply the chocolate, right? And that's it, right? So you take care of the cost of the chocolate and the shipping, which is so because there is this low barrier to entry, and because the focus is on feedback, right? It gives you an opportunity to get a diverse range of opinions from a diverse range of while there are certified chocolate tasters among the judges, not everyone has followed the same tasting regimen in order to become a judge, for example, which could happen in some competitions. That you get this feedback from a diverse group of people, diverse backgrounds. So let's show, what does it look like then? So this is the winners page from last year, from the 2025 challenge. And let's start off with the top. There's some information missing here. Dustin and I have been working behind the scenes to take a look at that. But notice that there is a dark category, a milk category, a white category, and an inclusion category. And then there's a gold, a silver, and a bronze. Now, from among each of these 4 categories and these 3 winners in a category, what you do, as I recall, is you go take a look and what are the highest scores that are given across the board. And so there's an opportunity to win 2 awards from the same entry, right? So there's a best overall. So this is the bar that was scored the highest across all of the judges. And then you've got the second, and then you've got the third place. So there it is, really, really focused. And notice that it's interesting to me is that we did talk about this, is that these are all flavored bars in one form. So this is a dark chocolate with maple. It's a blend of beans from Belize and Haiti. This is a vanilla latte white chocolate. And Mike, this is you from last year. And then John's is a genmaicha, which, as I recall, was in the inclusions nope, it wasn't in the inclusions category. Oh, it's interesting.
It's in the inclusion. Yeah,
it is, but I'm looking. Oh, and there it is. It won the silver in the inclusions category with the dark maple. So this is, for me, looking at this and then taking a look at the results is really interesting. But then there's this innovation category. So what we do is we have 3 entries, none of whom won anything, right, when it comes to the awards, right, the main awards. But the judges said these were cool. So from Carabines, this dark, 70% dark with passion fruit, orange, and guava. This Negroni bar, which I remember from Chocaiko, who was in Connecticut, as I recall, just really, 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 really interesting. And then this Diego's chocolate, I think they're from Guatemala, right? Which is also very, very interesting, their cardamom bar. And then you have the judging panel from last year where it's done, where we see, really quick. So we've got London Co. of Peace on Fifth, which is in Dayton, Ohio, as I recall, who says she's a huge fan of the innovations category. As am I. I got to say, as a judge, I like the inclusions category. It's among my favorite. Like white chocolate bars with inclusions are among my personal favorite kinds of bars to judge. And so the innovation category is huge. And innovation is judged differently than the other ones. Can you talk a little bit about, Dustin, about how what the rubric for judging is for the normal categories, and then how innovation is judged differently?
Yeah, so another way that the challenge is different than the other competitions is the same judges score all of the chocolate in the competition, which I don't believe is the case for most, if not all, of the other contests because of how many bars are entered and then dietary restrictions and things like that. So when we do the top overall, those numbers come from all the same judges. So it's a very fair way to do it. So I do like that part. As for the innovation, the first time we did it to how we do it now, we did tweak some things because we kind of had it laid out initially as picking or nominating per category, but then we changed that to just nominating across the board, which actually helped out better. So every entry is in consideration for this award, but if you're entering like a 70% plain dark chocolate, don't expect to win it, okay? But you could, I guess. But anyway, it has to be nominated, and however many judges nominate the one bar will determine if it wins an award or not. And it's up to 3. So every year we've had 3 people win it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that case where 3 win it, but it's up to 3 awards. And we celebrate that. It's great. And it has worked out, I believe, in the couple of years that we've done it. None of the other winners that have won the top awards have been different than the innovation awards. They've been all different winners, which is interesting. That means it's working, actually. So
it's a great validation for the concept that often people who take risks, especially if they are startup or they're newer makers and their mastery of technique or is not there quite yet, right? They get punished in regular competitions. Because to win a competition, you need to manufacture something which the majority of the judges are going to score high, right? And that means not always taking risks. Although there are some makers who just do such a wonderful job in terms of the technique that they can go and make interesting flavors. Polarizing bars would be a way to describe them. So it's really, really cool. And I have to really give a quick shout out to Lila Carvajal at Cocoa Supply. We went and we approached her, or you may have approached her, and I suggested it to do this, and she jumped in and said, yes, this is exactly the sort of thing I'd love to support. So she's not only a supporter of the innovations category of the Craft Chocolate Awards, but she's also a supporter of the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. She's the title sponsor, presenting sponsor for the Midwest Craft Chocolate Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. There's another thing that I want to point out about the website, because one of the things that happens with most other competitions is that all they're doing, let me go back to this, all they do is they post the list of winners, right? So I remember very early on, this may be a decade ago, maybe, 2018, 2017, that the International Chocolate Awards posted the entries and the winners, right? And now they're only posting the winners. That may be because they get 800, 900, 1,000 entries, and hundreds and hundreds of winners. But this is the list of the winners. One of the things that you do, which is very, very cool, is you post the list of alumni. So these are the year that the company first entered the awards. So this was their debut, right? And you list the companies that entered. And then you go to season 2, it's the entries. And then season 3, it's the entries. And these are all usable links, right? Which is another thing which is really cool, because sometimes you'll go to a competition and none of the links work. You've got the name of the company, right? There's another step. And these are all end up, being indexed by search engines. And so there is this extra promotion ability that doesn't get lost. Here's Muscat Chocolate from Brazil in season 3. And if we go to season 3, they didn't win anything, but their entry is still memorialized. Their presence in the competition is still memorialized. And I think that's hugely important. This is obviously, Dustin, a lot of extra work for you in maintaining the site.
Yeah,
but why
I probably
is that
don't do a
important?
very good job of it. I need to do a better job at maintaining the site. But I wanted this to be like community. So our industry is special. It's not. It's a craft industry, but it's smaller than craft beer, and it's very. I feel like it's a very intimate industry, and we need each other to grow, almost in a sense where we're educating the general public of why they need our product compared to an industrial chocolate maker, so like a Hershey's or somebody. So we're all kind of in the battle together, and just it's like a community thing. The same thing how we want to do this festival is we're stronger together. So let's support each other and let's put it out there in a way where we can have the history and remember everything. I mean, I remember the Moku bars. I don't think she makes chocolate anymore, but those are fantastic chocolate bars. And I can go back and see that and remember from season 1, she she won the contest overwhelmingly. I was like, oh boy. So.
Well, and I, as I recall in the discussion around season 2, it was the dominance of one maker across the entire competition in year 1 that led to some changes in the entries with rules regarding entries for season 2.
It's going to happen in a sense that year 1, nobody knows or what to expect. So some people just enter to kind of see what's going to happen or to support the person doing it and whatnot. So you have to grow from year 1. And then so it could have happened and it did happen. But she did well the other years too. So just part of it.
A quick note from London, who's still watching. Moku, she doesn't make chocolate anymore. I used to carry her bars. So this is again, London. I mean, so there's a virtuous circle that's going on in here as part of the community and solidarity. Is that many people who are involved in the Craft Chocolate Challenge end up being vendors and exhibitors, right, at the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival, and there are some similar kind of aspects in the way the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival, the philosophy of organization around the festival is all put together to grow this community and to educate each other and to network and all these other things. And London, a Piece on Fifth, is a good example of that, in that, some of the people who've won awards, some of the companies that have won awards at the Craft Chocolate Challenge and who have been exhibitors at the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival are now carried at the shop. And that's just, for me, it's again another validation of what you're working. And she follows up, I love the opportunity to create bragging rights for new makers. Absolutely. Absolutely. Although I don't think that's why you started this bragging rights. It is something that grows out of it.
But I love it too. That's why I get physical awards. So, and then, there's only 3 winners in each thing, right? So I can utilize funds for that. But physical awards, I mail the winners. So that's bragging rights. You can
and
wear it around.
They're substantial. They used to be round medallions, and now they're, what is it? CNC etched, metals, they've got heft to them.
Yeah.
Right. Which are huge. Yeah. No, it's really good. So I want to jump to another thing, which is I again, I think it's really important when it comes to growing the community, right? Is that here again, this is the top page for season 3, the 2024 Craft Chocolate Challenge. And I love the snapshot at the top of the page, right? Which is cacao beans from 33 regional cacao farms spanning 18 different countries of origin. This gets you an idea of the scope. 66 chocolate bars accepted from 4 continents, 14 countries, and 13 US states. So 14 countries, including the United States. This is an international competition, right? This is an international challenge. We get stuff from all over the world. There were 24 entries in the dark chocolate category, 15, 7, and 20. So inclusions is a really highly competitive category. Again, my favorite category to judge. But this, we look at season 2. There's a similar kind of listing, a synopsis of what's going on, and you can get an idea of their trajectory. So the different number of entries that were judged, the different categories were judged, and then we went from 43 bars in season 2 to 66 bars in season 3 last year. You need to update this, so we need that information. I understand the challenges, but again, one of the things which I think is really, really important for people to understand about the competition, and Dustin, you mentioned it, is that there's a limitation on the number of categories. There's a limitation on the number of awards. There's a limitation on the number of entries. Right? So it's 1 per category, no more than 2 overall, right? Which helps keep manageable from judging. But unlike other competition, in the challenge, no one maker can continue to dominate, right? And the way you've been able to accomplish that is through a category which you call the master category. Tell us about the Craft Chocolate Challenge Masters and what that means.
So if you kind of look at what happens year after year in some of these other competitions, you see the same names over and over, right? And whether that is they have just fantastic chocolate, or they have a big marketing budget to send a bunch of chocolate, or whatever the case may be, you see it. And our job is to help chocolate makers. So if we're growing the contest and we limit everything, and somebody has won it so many times, I feel like maybe they don't need it as much as somebody else. So I created a master's program. So if you win 3 times, it doesn't have to be consecutive 3 times, but if you've entered the contest and you've won 3 times, then you are graduated to a master. And what that means is you are not allowed to enter the contest anymore. However, if you want to send bars for us to judge and give feedback on, you may. So there's times where maybe you become a master and then you've changed your packaging, or you've changed something, or you're diving into doing more inclusions where you've been mostly focused on plain chocolates, and you want to get the feedback because you're familiar with our process and it helped you before. we're not going to shut you out. You can send it. We'll give you the feedback. It's, that's fine. But you can't be part of the contest anymore because you've proven to your excellence already through our challenge. So that's kind of how it happened.
So let's go through and talk about the first masters, the first entries to graduate into as a master for the Craft Chocolate Challenge. So the first one is Tandy Peterson of Embers Chocolate here in Phoenix, just an hour and a half or so south of where I am. Tell us about your impression of the work that Tandy did. I mean, so another thing that people may not really understand here, Dustin, is you're not a judge, right?
I am a judge.
Or you are a judge?
I'm
always a judge?
Always a judge.
But you can't enter. So I
can't enter. No, that's a conflict of interest.
All right. So it's good. So tell us about, as a judge, then, your impression of, because Tandy was the first of the masters. So these are in chronological order of being awarded.
Yes.
So tell us about your thoughts about Tandy.
So how Tandy makes chocolate is almost like telling a story. It's going down like this journey, and it's really interesting. And we have limitations. A lot of her bars are inclusions, but sometimes she would change how she makes her bars even to enter our contest based on our rules. She makes very interesting chocolate, and she's also one that inspired the Innovation Award too, because some of her chocolate could be polarizing based on certain ingredients she uses. Like she does some spicy stuff that doesn't always sit well with me. I just can't handle a lot of spice and different things like that. But man, how she does it, I guess maybe because of her culinary background as a chef and things like that, it's like it just works. So she's able to use that in a way that our general judges enjoy it. So yeah, she was the first to become a master, and I think they're like mostly all different categories. Yeah,
she's got inclusion white and best dark top overall. So I mean, her versatility has been as a maker has been improving. And I think it's one of the things that's interesting about this is that she won in seasons 1, 2, and 3, right? And perhaps one of her current most popular bars, and a bar that she sold out in Rushville at the first Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival, was her elote bar, which is a Mexican street corn milk chocolate bar, or white chocolate bar, which is really, really quite remarkably, really, really wonderful. She wasn't even allowed to enter it, right? Because she had already graduated into the master's program.
No, there's a story behind that.
Okay.
It was year 1. She did enter that. She entered that in year 1, and it was very, very polarizing. But she got some super high scores by the people who that knew and understood what she was trying to do. But
Gotcha.
What she has told me since is that she had taken the feedback from that and tweaked her elote bar based on the feedback, and now it is what it is. So she won like a gold world from the ICAs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a pretty remarkable story. So I thought that was pretty cool. And everybody in Rushville, like, they'll come to my store and ask me if she's going to be at the festival, and all they do is talk about that elote bar. People in Rushville like their corn too. So
yeah. Well, I say you are in the middle of corn country in Rush County, Indiana. So yes, absolutely. And I thank you for telling me the story. I either had misremembered it or had never been told it. But I think it's again another testament. You had somebody who.
Sorry to cut you off, but
no,
it is a good point to say at this time. Once you've entered a bar, like she entered the elote bar, she could not enter it again, because once you've entered it once, then that's it. If there's been major changes or whatever, then we accept it, but you're not allowed to enter the same bar twice. So, to the
in either consecutive or any future competition.
Yep. Now, if maybe it's season 10, maybe we'll get flexible, but yeah.
Right. And another thing which I also think is interesting is that you personally review each one of the entries, and somebody says this is I think this is a flavored dark chocolate bar. and you might say, no, it actually has a texture and it belongs in the inclusion category, you will move it.
Sometimes I have to do that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just, for me, again, what we have is an opportunity for a maker to enter a competition without taking a financial risk other than shipping the bars for judging, right? And getting this feedback, and which they use to turn around and improve the bar. And then 2-3 years later, right, it emerges, to the top of the world competition,
Cool.
other world
Cool
competitions,
story.
which is a great story. And, again, I've used the word validates more times than I would normally think about in the course of an episode. But when I think about the first time you contacted me with what you wanted to do, or what you wanted to do for season 2, this has come just such a long way, right? That, I'm just really happy to be a part of, the success story of what's going on. So let's talk about winner number 2.
Yeah, Kesho. I think she started in season 2. I think that's when they started, and they were actually not in America yet. They were still in China when they entered, and now they have a shop there in Texas. So lots of different ways of doing things with flavors. So really interesting bars that people just fell in love with. Yeah, so I pick my judges. This year's might be different, but every year before we do in-person judging. So my in-person judges, I typically pick that are kind of regular consumers or a little bit new to the craft chocolate world, because I'll kind of be there with them and can guide them if they have questions. And one of those judges just fell in love with like the dark chocolate raspberry that she has, and he's a local. So when she came to the festival this year, he instantly darted right towards her booth to try to score some of those bars based on having tried it from entering the contest. So that's always kind of cool. So probably our judges end up buying from these people online later on. So.
I certainly walked away from the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival with samples from pretty much everybody here. But it's also, again, it's, this is, a first time entry wins top overall, third highest ranked in the entire challenge, the first year of entry.
And yeah, that yuzu bar, I still remember it, and I'm trying my hardest to recapture it. I just made a dark milk chocolate with yuzu, trying to do it. But I'm sure then she was in China. I bet she could get a hold of some better yuzu products there.
Yeah, one of the things about being in the United States is finding a pure, uncut yuzu product. It's difficult to find as a liquid, and trying to find something which might have been freeze-dried is going to be a real challenge. But, inclusions, this is where we all love the work that she does. Black Sesame, Genmai Cha, just really fabulous work.
But that matcha, the matcha she did with, so.
Yeah, so Genmai Cha is a matcha with toasted rice, right, is what the Genmai Cha is. Yeah. So I think that the matcha was in the chocolate, and the Genmai Cha was then sprinkled into the back of the bar. Yeah, just really lovely. The bars are really interesting. The mold is really interesting. The packaging is really interesting.
That's and another thing. When entered year 2, the packaging was completely different. And year 3, it's like, oh, somebody listened. It's like, whoa, because all these little notes and all these little things, they were there, and it was fantastic. The packaging is fantastic, and I feel like we were part of that process. So.
Even if we paid
just a little bit, just a little bit.
And then finally, Mike, who I hope is still watching us, Encore Coffee and Chocolate. He's the third master. So tell us about Mike.
Mike's great, and Mike's the one that whenever the contest is over, he'll buzz in my ear about some some follow-up questions he might have. And he's usually picked up on which judge I am. I get the follow-up questions.
Yeah.
So he is very adamant about wanting to learn and understanding what he's doing, and you can see it. And he does great with coffee and the chocolate. It just fantastic how he uses the coffee and the chocolate. And all three of these were at the Midwest Festival, which is really cool.
I was just about to say, is if you were in Rushville this past November, all three of the masters. So although Tandy herself was not present,
she opened a new restaurant.
She opened a new restaurant. I'm planning to visit there shortly. So Tandy, Ember's Chocolate was there, although Tandy was not. Tandy was there the previous year. This year, Liang was in Rushville. The previous year, they were not. But last year and the year before, so both years of the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival, Mike was there. I also want to, hone in on something that you said, Dustin, which I think is really important, is that Mike was able to figure out which judge you were looking at the profile of comments. So if you enter, you get every comment that every judge, writes about your bar. And if I'm sometimes I'm taking 20-30 minutes, as a judge, I can spend a lot of time thinking about how to go about doing this. But if I write 10 words, you get 10 words. If I write 100 words, you get 100 words of feedback, and you get all of the feedback in total from every single one of the judges, right? But if you can figure out who the judge is, right, it's pretty obvious, right? For me,
don't harass them.
Well, no, but
unless it's Clay. Unless it's Clay.
We don't. Yeah, you go ahead, harass me. You have the opportunity if you have a bit of feedback from a particular judge that you're not clear about, you can go and talk to that judge about it, which is correspond with the judge, and maybe they'll get a call with you. As far as Mike is concerned, as a member of the Chocolate Life, I do monthly AMAs. So ask me anything. So video calls once a month. And Mike has joined me. And sometimes he's the only person in the call. And he's got an hour and a half of my time in order to be able to ask questions about what he's doing and where to go. This is something that I do independently of the Craft Chocolate Challenge, but for members of the Chocolate Life. So if you are a member of the Chocolate Life and you enter into the Craft Chocolate Challenge, then you have the opportunity to engage with me on a regular basis. So let's go. And one more comment before we talk about season 5. So as we celebrate offering craft chocolate now for 16 years or 6 years, London, it is exciting to see the evolution of the conversation around this type of chocolate. You're both doing a brilliant job of brewing and stoking curiosity, affection, and a sense of equity when looking at chocolate, especially in the competition. Thrilled to continue to fold in special finds from the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival and the Craft Chocolate Challenge. Hate to miss the final bits, signing off a bit early. London, thank you very, very much. And I'm hoping that you'll be in Rushville for the next edition of the Craft Chocolate, of the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. Whoops, let me get there. So Dustin, let's talk about season 5.
Season 5.
Season 5 of the Craft Chocolate Challenge.
As you said earlier about, it's an international contest. So now this is the first year I'm dealing with tariffs. So I figure it might be a little bit slower or inconsistent this year. But if you have questions about how to send your chocolate and things like that, feel free to shoot emails. I can't pay your tariffs. So we have to figure that part out. But that's kind of a obstacle this year.
So I just want to let everybody know, this is the season 5 page for the Craft Chocolate Challenge. You can see me highlighting it here. So this is the season 5 page. Entries are open now. And entering is a 2-stage process. So first, what you must do is you must click to find the entry form, right? And you fill out the entry form, and it gets submitted to Dustin, right? And at that point, you are not an official entry. Right? So Dustin, tell us about what an official entry is and the fact that you get listed here.
Yeah, so an official entry is when I actually physically have the chocolate. So because there's no form of payment, anybody can just fill out a form. So I cannot consider that an official entry until I actually have the chocolate. So when I get the chocolate in hand, I usually will update the form, the entries here, so
Mhm.
you know what's going on. I will typically stop accepting in per category when it's around 25 entries, but it's going to depend. White's always a little slower. So if I need to
Mhm.
up it to 30, accepting 30 dark, and I can do that. But that's kind of
Mhm.
how we gauge things. So it's best to kind of get it done. Um, Send it when you can, but try to just get it done. Is better for everybody, so we
Right.
know what to
So it's
expect
im-
and how to organize.
yeah, so it's important to understand on this page that these are official entries. So these are not the companies who've just said, "Hey, Dustin, I want to enter." These are companies who've said, "Hey, Dustin, I want to enter," and Dustin has received the chocolate. So it's
Yep.
really important for people to understand there are more than 3 entries so far in the competition.
Yep.
It's really interesting to note that the first 3 entries are international because Yohoa, this anise avocado of matcha, Yohoa is from Honduras. So the first 3 official entries are international entries.
Yep.
Right? So,
They passed me their bars at the festival though, so it was a little easier for them
ah,
to get in.
okay.
Their bars were already in the country.
The
So
bars were already in the country.
yeah.
So I didn't know that. But if you are going to be entering internationally from internationally, you are going to want to not only notify Dustin that you want to be entering in the competition, but to get your bars in the shipping pipeline as soon as you possibly can. So, because Dustin, you had, it's not necessarily for the competition, but I understand for the festival, uh, you had some last minute. Oh, are the jar bars going to arrive on time to do this?
Yeah,
Um,
a couple makers they'd send the bars to me ahead of time for the festival. They'd go through the imports and whatever, and they get held up. Some got held up a couple weeks, and another one came right the day of the festival. So yeah, um, it's best to do it early.
mhm.
Here, the weather's fine for sending. So if you're sending overseas, DHL, usually the hub is in Cincinnati. You don't really have to worry about the chocolate melting or anything like that. So
Mhm.
you can just go ahead and send it. It'd be easier.
Right. Right.
Um,
And I want to point out that right, on the post for today's episode, let me go and make this a little more visible. On the post for today's episode, there is a block here, right? So this is where it is, where it does give the deadlines. For the deadline for registering is February 21st, and entries must be received by February 28th. And so, unlike some other competitions, the judging will be done like in like it'll be done by mid-April or maybe even sooner. Is that correct?
it really depends on how many bars we get.
Yeah.
So when typically if I have all the bars by February 28th, which I should, then I will
Mhm.
instantly ship them off to the judges and they'll start right away. Last year, we worked with Beanstalker and had everything online ready to go
Mhm.
as soon as you got the bars. And previously, I had made PDF forms for everybody and I emailed them out. So by the time the judges get the chocolate, they're ready to go to town. And then it's basically their pace. I try not to rush them because I want them to provide the best feedback they possibly can. And sometimes things happen. People get sick. You don't want people
Mhm.
that have lost some taste and everything. They have to recover. So it sometimes takes longer. I don't try to be super strict on it, but I definitely by mid-April I'm going to be calling some people. So I try to get it out in March if I possibly can.
Gotcha. Absolutely. And so, Dustin, we're sort of at the end of today's episode. So, yeah, we're an hour in. Do you have some final comments that you'd like to um, give to the people who are watching, whether today or who are going to be watching it shortly, about the competition?
To me, where this began, where it is now, and I have a relationship with Mike now about chocolate and because of the contest. Before, I didn't have any real chocolate maker friends because I was in the middle of nowhere, and that was part of the problem. But now I've been able to connect
Mhm.
with people through this contest, and now with the festival, it's really interesting to see that. And I know I have grown as a chocolate maker because of all of that, and I
Mhm.
know that it can be an asset. So I am excited to be able to continue to offer this, but I want people to do it. If it, if it's not going to be utilized, I have a very busy life. So I want you to utilize this. I want you
Mhm.
to send in your bars. We'll give you the feedback. We'll help you if you have specific feedback. Put it in the
Mhm.
form. We want to help. That's why it's created, and I want to feel like I am doing something for people. That's what I was looking for myself. So please take the opportunity to do this.
Mhm. And I have to say, as a judge and somebody who's been a long time advocate for craft and specialty chocolate, that my participation has been especially fulfilling because I know that as an organizer, Dustin is open to receiving feedback about changes and improvements, even when he needs to be convinced that a little bit. I mean, ultimately, Dustin, it's his competition, and he's going to make the decision. But being open to feedback has been a really, really important aspect of my enjoying being a part of the competition, being a part of the challenge, not competition. And so, if you're a relatively young maker or a maker who has entered into big international competitions and hasn't won anything, right? And what you'd like to do is you'd like to be a part of a challenge, right, where the primary goal for you is to understand what the judges are thinking about your chocolate. Why might it not be ranking up there with others? That the focus on feedback is a really important aspect of it here, of this particular challenge as opposed to other competitions. And again, it's a relatively low risk effort, and the ability to join this wonderful community um, around the challenge and the festival, right? To improve your skills as a chocolate maker and improve awareness of your brand is really, really, really the main part of what it is that we're trying to do here.
Yeah, it opens the door too for some opportunities, which is really neat because I get to know some of these guys, and they'll maybe email me questions about something, or they'll let me know
Mhm.
that they're traveling somewhere, let's say Japan, because I have a connection there. And then I can maybe try to introduce them to a chocolate maker in Japan. While they're over there, they can go
Mhm.
see this guy and talk to him about
Mhm.
that. And, or they have a specific question about something. Maybe it's about roasting and they want to know, but now, Mike is like a master roaster to be like, well, hey, let me hook you up with Mike and see if he can kind of help you with this. Or
Mhm.
we last year we had Otis from Kimu Farms. He started growing cacao, and he had his first batch of beans, and no one had made chocolate with it. So he sent it to me, and then I'm not as confident of how I'm roasting right now because I've changed roasters. So I'm like, let's send some to Mike too. And Mike does his, and then I'll do mine, and then we'll try to go. So it's creating a community where we can all help each other out. And so if you take the opportunities once you've entered the contest and you've created a way to communicate with me
Mhm.
or some of the others, um, that's
Mhm.
just a way to grow on itself too. So it's really interesting, and it's really interesting to see it come even further into Rushville for the festival.
Mhm.
Kind of the two worlds coming together. It's fantastic. So it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's here right now. So
Right.
take it.
Yeah. In a way, it reminds me of sort of the early Wild West days of the bean to bar movement, when there was a lot more in-person sharing of what's going on and not necessarily everything being mediated by Facebook or mediated by some other, getting together and people sharing this stuff or sharing that expertise. Because even though we all may be, well, I'm not, but even though you might all be chocolate makers, and even though you might be using the same beans, right? It turns out you have different equipment. Your sensibilities as an artist are very different as well. And so you can take exactly the same beans and produce very, very different chocolate with it. right? And so you're not really competitors, because in some sense, a rising tide should be raising all boats, lifting all boats. And I think that's very, very cool aspect of it as well. And there was something
we
else I
can
wanted to
gain
say.
more from each other
Oh,
than what we're
yeah.
losing by, like, maybe a customer picking someone else. We're going to gain more from each other than that, especially when we're kind of worlds apart. So.
Right. And I do want to point out, it's just, this is something that happened at this past Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival, although this episode is not about the festival, it's about the challenge. They are inextricably related in many respects because of Dustin's involvement in both of these, is that we had Sweets Escalier from Japan, right, wanted input on their, among other things, their roasting process. And we were offering 30-minute coaching sessions at no charge during the festival. But Tomomi and his wife were in your shop. And over the course of 3 days or so, they produced chocolate. Actually, they produced chocolate and you produced chocolate using the same beans, using different, and the same roast, but different production. But he came in to get feedback on how he was roasting and was he doing anything wrong with his roasting. And so there's an opportunity. And these are things that, the organizers, I'm going to be involved in sponsorship, sales and other things like that for next year. These are things that we get to look at in terms of what you are interested in, right? In terms of a chocolate maker, as somebody who's entering the challenge or somebody who has come in, going to become a vendor at the festival, is we can incorporate these kinds of learning opportunities, right, as a part of the programs with your support, right? And this is, as Dustin said, really, really key. There are only 3 official entries so far. There are many more other intent to enter, right, receipts.
Yeah, people wait late.
Yeah.
Don't wait.
Yeah.
Don't do that to me.
Yes.
Don't do that to
me. Please, if you are interested in entering the competition,
just go ahead
signify that you are interested in entering as soon as possible. And with that, Destin, I want to say thanks very much for joining me today. But before you leave, this is the homepage, everybody, of the Chocolate Life right now. This episode of PodSaveChocolate, like every episode of PodSaveChocolate, is supported by the members of the Chocolate Life. You can go to the homepage. You can go click on the join button. There's always been a free membership. A week from today, this coming Friday, is the 17th anniversary of my launching thechocolatelife.com. It's been on 4 different software platforms over the course of 17 years. There has always been a free membership tier, right? You get monthly emails. You can contribute ideas for stories that you'd like to be covered as a member. But if you do have the resources to support, for as little as $5 a month, you can become a Team TCL member. Or, right, if you want to do it annually, it's $42 a year. But higher levels of support include coaching and consulting hours. And that's how I keep PodSaveChocolate on the air, and it's how I keep the Chocolate Life going. And with that, I want to say thanks again to Dustin for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Close and listen. You can go into the comments on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. You can do things after the fact. I look at all the comments and I respond to them. If there's a question, you can go to the Craft Chocolate Challenge website. There is a link in the post for today's episode. You can send a question to Dustin about entering the challenge. And we're about to have a revamped Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival website up and running for the 2026 year. And I want to close out, as I always do, with my motto, which is, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Until the next time, everyone, ciao.